Hello, this is Patrick with New Jersey's Outdoor Adventures YouTube channel. Today is an update video of the 1961 Airstream Bambi renovation project. Last video I was refacing and refinishing the pantry slash wardrobe cabinet. The doors are now finished and I spray clear coated them, polyurethane, water-based. And let me show you an update on the Airstream inside. A little breezy out today, so I want to make sure I get that door clipped in. Perfect. Alright, inside I started dismantling some of the interior because I'm in the mock-up stages still, but I'm mostly where I got everything fitted where it's going to go, a lot of the holes drilled, and I can start disassembling it all and doing the finishing. So today I'm going to try to sand down and finish the kitchen galley cabinet and the face frame for the cabinet, the face frame cutout for the NovaCool refrigerator, the structure wall for the division between the wet bath and the kitchen. And I'm going to try to put the laminate on this wall here with the contact cement. This is where the pantry wardrobe cabinet will be reinstalled once the inside the flooring's done and it's all painted and cleaned up. That track is where it slides into. In the last video you see me fit it in there to make sure it fits correctly. I got my low profile toilet, regular RV style toilet, because it's a low profile because it sits on this pedestal right over the black tank. And I'm waiting for the company Inca Plastics to reopen because they supply the tank to Vintage Trailer Supply, and I need to get the tank on order, but it's on back order right now because that company's closed because of what's going on in the news. But when they reopen, I'll get that tank ordered. They make almost an identical tank replacement, and you have to cut in or spin weld the fittings on. So I'm debating whether to have Vintage Trailer Supply do it, or I'll buy the tools and do it myself, because I do have to add a lot of fittings to it. But back out to the cabinet. Today I'm going to take all the measurements so the door can get mounted with the hinges. I bought chrome hinges. That's the style. The door is going to sit here and it's going to hinge this way. I'm going to actually make the cabinet so it hinges towards the back of the trailer, the original way, the original design. But I have to make measurements. I'm going to have the hinges mounted 1.5 inches from the bottom. I'm going to make sure I install them square. You don't want them crooked. And I'm going to space it evenly. Then after I get the hinges installed, I'll be able to install the hardware. And instead of just regular cabinet pulls, I found new old stock of these cabinet catches, and it actually has a push button that operates a mechanism that releases the cabinet. And this is the original little instruction sheet that shows you all the different applications and how to put them on. And in the bag here is all the pieces, so it's a lot of little moving parts. But this is the handle I'm going to be using. Now it doesn't match the drawer handles in the style, but that's fine. This is a different piece of furniture in the trailer. And then this is the little push button here that when you insert it correctly, you'll be able to push this button and it will push down and plunge on this piece, which releases the door and allows the door to open. And there's all different applications for different overlays and double doors. So I'm going to be using this application right here, and I'll follow the guide for that. So let's get started. In the package of hinges, there's 2 different size screws with 2 different style heads. The longer ones with the rounded style head is to attach the hinge to the face frame of your project. And the shorter screws of this style head is how you attach the hinge to your door. So you don't want to mix them up. Also too, the thickness of my doors are a ½ inch. So I made a gauge on my drill bit. That way I don't drill too deep and drill through the project out the other side. If you drill through the project out the other side, you're going to have a nasty little hole to look at. Then what I did was I measured an inch and a quarter from the bottom of the door to about here, and I'm working on the back side of the door. So I picked the nicest side of the door to be up front, and the side that wasn't finished perfectly I'm putting in the back, because you're not going to see that much. So now with a measurement 1.5 inches, I could place the hinge. But when I put the hinge there, it can get a little wonky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to keep the hinge square and hold it in place, just like that. Now I could drill the holes, making sure that I don't go too deep, because that would be a problem. And you want to make sure you're using the correct size drill bit for the screws. You don't want to oversize it, and you don't want to undersize it, because you could split the wood. So I'm just going to start with 2, and then once I get those screws in, I could then tighten the third one and drill that hole. Alright, now I can remove this temporarily, put the hinge up. I'm going to tighten it by hand just to get it started, and then I can put the screwdriver on it, tighten it down. And if you start here and the wood split, you might want to go up a drill bit size or go a little bit deeper. Okay, now that it's snug, I'm going to put my square back up, square up that hinge, and drive it home. Now that I got that square, I could drill the last hole. I'm going right up to where the tape is. I'm not going any deeper. I'm making sure I'm using the correct screws that came in the package. Okay. Now this hinge is screwed correctly into the back of the door. Now I got to measure 1.5 inches down from the top here and do the same thing. And when it's all said and done, the door is going to sit just like that and open and hinge. You have a top and bottom hinge. And this is what the front profile is going to look like. With the hinges all installed on the back of the cabinets, now I could line the door up in the opening. I want the same amount of overhang all the way around. So I made some measurements, and I found it easier to clamp a board across the bottom here that was perfectly square with the cabinet at the right overhang. So if I just lay the door up against that face here, that keeps it square for the rest of the project. But these hinges are a little tricky because they have a little bit of a spring to them. So if I was to just measure and keep the offset here on both sides even, and then press the door down, you'll actually see the door moves, and then you'd have a gap on this side. So what I have to do is push the door down first, get some pressure on it, and then make my measurements and see that I have my 1.5 inches on both sides, which I don't. So I just have to go over a tiny little bit right to the mark there. So now the door is in place, and what I could do is start drilling my holes for the hinges. I'm going to do the bottom one first. I'm going to use the other set of screws that came in the package. And this is a lot easier to do when it's out of the trailer and laying flat. If you're in a vertical environment, you're going to be fighting the gravity, and sometimes things could get askew. But I had the advantage of being able to remove the cabinet. Alright, making sure I'm still square at the bottom, and push down. And the trick is to keep all the cabinets lined up with the hinges on the same side. I'm not over tightening them in either. Just snugging them down. I'll tighten them the last couple turns with a manual screwdriver. There we go. That's door number 1. So I'm going to release the clamps. I can open and test the door. Pretty good. Now this is going to open towards the back of the trailer. Alright, let me do the rest of them. After the hinge has been installed and everything's nice and square, I have to decide where to place the handles. Now I was thinking center on each one of the cabinet doors for aesthetics. But the challenge I have is inside the cabinet there's a bar in the middle of this one and this one. So the mechanical operation to unlatch the handle wouldn't work properly. So I was thinking, because this is the top of the cabinet and that's the bottom of the cabinet, I could put the handle over here towards the bottom because you don't have to reach up really high to get to it. And then this one I can't put in the middle because there's a brace here. So I was thinking of putting that one up high. And this one here I'd put up high. This one doesn't have any bracing on the inside, but it is a lower cabinet, so you don't have to reach down. So I was thinking of placement like that. Now, the manufacturer made these handles back in the day. They have a very specific instruction of how they want it done. You have to drill the hole for the little handle, the push button first. This is the little push button. And they wanted 7/8 inches from the inside, but on a door that sits over the face frame, I had to make a measurement on what the overhang is and then add 7/8 inch. And what I did was I used this to make a gauge so I know exactly where to drill the hole. So now they want you to drill that hole, and this will be on the top, right at the spot here. And once I drill that hole, then I could measure and make the holes here. But I have to decide before I make that hole how much overhang I want on the bottom. So I'm thinking I want to have 1.5 inches, which will bring it right to here. If I do that, I just have to make sure that the mechanism's not going to interfere here, so which it doesn't. So back to my mark, this is where the little handle is going to stick through, just like that. So I have to make the hole exactly at the tip, right here. Alright, and the size drill bit they're recommending is 1/4 inch. Just make sure there's nothing behind it. You don't want to put too much pressure because you don't want to splinter out the back either. Okay, there is the hole. Now once you have that hole set, they give you this little grommet that's supposed to go in there just to dress it up a little bit nicer. I'll hammer that in a little bit. Now I have to make the measurement from this hole. I have to go 2 5/16 inch down to get the other hole, but I also have to make sure that's square. So I'm going to use the same gauge here once I make my measurement to drill that hole out. Okay, so measuring from this hole down 2 5/16 inch with the same 1/4 inch drill bit. If you look at a tape measure, it's 5/16 is right before 3/8, and the other measurement they want is 7/16. That's from center to center. 7/16 is the notch right after 3/8. So just a little tip: if you don't know where 3/8 inches, it's right below 1/2 inch. But what I'm going to do now is use the gauge again. I made my measurements already. So I measured from center up 2 5/16 inch. And then from center this hole up 7/16 inch. And then I'm going to use the gauge here that I have already set. So all the doors will be the same. I'm going to make a line that goes across that one, and a line that goes across that one, and that is the center where I'm going to drill the hole. Okay, now what I could do is I'm going to hammer this little grommet in. And then I could make sure everything lines up. And open up the door. Just a little tiny little bit of splintering out the back. Helps if you clamp a piece of wood behind it. With the proper size screws sourced, I now have to put the little button through the handle, get that in place, stick that through the little grommet, then I can open the door and hand thread the screws into the handle. And they make it so once the button's in, it can't pop out. Once they, won't pop out. So now I could tighten the screws. Okay. All right. Now, since this is made for a longer or thicker door, there's different notches here that are already pre-cut in it that you could break off to your length. So I made the measurement. This is for an 1.25 inch door, and then it goes down in increments. I have to break it off the last notch for a 1/2 inch thick door. Alright, breaking off at the very last notch. Now I can line up that goes in here. Okay. So when you push on the little button, it's going to operate this. But it looks like I got to undo the screw for the handle because it uses one of the screws in here. It wasn't clear on the instructions. So I'll just undo that one. And it's going to use the same screw hole. Just like that. Alright, now when you press the button, it's going to release this, and then there's a little catch that goes in the back of the cabinet. So let me get this squared off, and I'll tighten that down, and then I can locate where this latch is going to go. With my smaller drill bit back in, once I have this latch square, I'm going to drill a pilot hole. And I could put this little flathead screw in. And that is what's going to keep that square. Oh, and don't mind the painter's tape here. I made a little mistake when I drilled that first series of holes. I won't make that same mistake there, so this is covering a little mess I made. Alright, so now I have to locate the little latch, and this has a side where this piece will roll over it, and then a back that locks it in place. So what I had to do is swing the door shut, and by eye make a little line exactly where this latch lines up with the cabinet. Once I did that, then I was able to put this in place, and this is adjustable in and out, and make some marks on the face frame here. Then I could take the same drill bit and drill pilot holes there. And I could make sure I put this in correctly. Now it's just more work to take it out and put it back in. Spin it by hand. And if this all goes as planned, it will latch, and I'll press the button and that will release the latch. Okay, got it all the way where it just barely sits proud of the frame. That's it. That's going to keep that door shut. Nice. Now I just got to do the rest of it. Here is the completed cabinet. Stained on this side. There's going to be a face frame right here, and this is going to be a wardrobe. You can see the sidewall. The handle's just installed. It's got a white detail down the middle. Push button. The rod goes through this grommet. And when you push on it, this is the receptacle that it sits behind. This is what it looks like from the back of the door. And that's what keeps it shut. Same thing with this one. And I had to adjust the spacing because of this bar in the middle would have interfered. But this being the top, this being the bottom, I didn't want the handle in the middle or on the bottom. But the doors are nice and square to the frame. This is going to sit in the channel of the trailer. And then this side is regular laminate. And this is going to be where the wet bath is. Well, this is Patrick with New Jersey's Outdoor Adventures YouTube channel. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like this video, comment, share, subscribe. I love it, and we'll see you soon.